afternoon, and thank you for joining us in our Resilience Matter series. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Sharon Aneja, who's a positive psychology coach and also the founder of Humanity Works Consultancy and Recharge at Work. So Sharon does some great work helping organisations optimise employee wellbeing and engagement, and is also a former corporate leader. And also, hot off the press, a Global Trade Chambers Award winner for female entrepreneurship. Congratulations,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, well done, you. It's something really passionate about. So I just think that's brilliant. And topical, it was all about resilience as well. So, yeah, perfect timing. So tell us a little bit about what you do, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy and Alison, for having me here today. I'm the founder of an organisation called Humanity Works Consultancy and Recharge at Work. And both those brands are very much dedicated to preventing burnout in the workplace and helping to revive staff engagement. So if you like, when companies were first initially talking about well-being and bringing in more well-being resources within their organizations, it was very much about treating symptoms. So it was like, oh, people might be feeling unwell. Let's sign up to an employee assistance program. Let's get mental health first aid training done. All these things, which are all great things to do. But ultimately, what they do is they treat symptoms.
Yeah.
And what we need to do if we're really going to embrace the future of well-being is really start to treat the causes. So actually, when you look at, what are the causes of, say, burnout or mental ill health that is caused by the workplace, a lot of it comes down to management. And so it's really important that we look at how we can identify what's really going on in those companies, how we can treat those causes at a very early stage, how we can prevent them from escalating, so that we create healthier, more inclusive, more compassionate workplaces where people feel energized and where they feel like they're growing all the time, because that's when people are at their best. And so the work that we do with organizations is very much in this prevention space. It's what we call the future of well-being. It's where we need to now take organizations so that they can have those employees who are happy, who are loyal, who are engaged, who want to come every day to work, who want to work together, who have great relationships at work. If we think about, all of us were to sit here and think about the places where we've loved working the most, it will be those kind of workplace cultures. And so how can we intentionally help organizations to create those kind of workplace cultures where people feel like they belong? Because ultimately, if we want people to be resilient, it's not enough just to give them the bulletproof vest. We need to stop firing bullets at them. So that will really change the workplace culture. And that is the work that we do. So it's very much embracing that next stage of workplace well-being and really helping companies to step up and escalate their efforts in this area, because this is what people want and it's what they need, and it's what businesses need in order to succeed.
Yeah.
You say it's what businesses need. Oh, sorry. I'm just interested. You say it's what businesses need. Do they recognise that need at this stage? Because anything where we're looking at, sort of well-being 2.0, as you say, sometimes there's a bit of a lag between those who have the expertise recognising this need and the businesses themselves.
Yeah, so I think what we look at, when we're working with organizations is what are the indicators where things aren't going well. So often what people come to us with are, our people aren't getting along, or there's a lot of negativity, or the ball's been dropped on some projects. We're seeing perhaps higher absence rates, or we're seeing higher turnover rates. There will be a multitude of indicators, but what they won't understand is what are the true causes of it, because most of the reporting, if there is any reporting that's been done, is very much at a surface level. So often what they come to us with are a list of things that they can see that aren't quite right, but what they don't know is why it's happening and actually what to do about it. I think it can feel exceptionally overwhelming for a lot of leaders to know where to start, which is why they really need to work with, people who have expertise in this area to really get underneath the skin of the problems and to really be able to find the solutions. But Alison, it's a great question, because actually you can run the organization and not know actually where the issues really are. And I think it's very hard, because you're in the day-to-day, you're getting the work done, you're hitting the targets, you're meeting the demands of, shareholders or stakeholders. So actually it's really important that we work with them to understand what's really going on.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because I think quite often you can see whether your staff are stressed, etc. So that's one element. But when you see your team not being collaborative or missing timescales, you don't immediately jump to well-being as the solution, do you? You think about, how do you create more time? How do you be more efficient? You look at things like that before maybe you look at some of those environmental factors.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting you say that, because if we look at the 7 pillars of well-being from the CIPD, actually one of the most important pillars out of those 7 is good work, but it's the one that doesn't get talked about enough. When people think about well-being in the workplace, they think about things like physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, but actually good work is the one that will determine really the quality of how people experience the workplace. And that is exactly all those things you just said, Kathy, which is, what's people's workload like? How are they getting on with each other? What is the communication levels like? How can they have more psychological safety? Do the leaders have high enough levels of emotional intelligence? And if you look at the HSE's model, the Health and Safety Executives model, and they talk about the 3 levels of well-being. So you've got what's called tertiary, secondary, and primary. Now, tertiary is where they intervene after crisis. So that might mean that someone is already reporting that they're not feeling well, and they might be referred to the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, or they might be referred to a mental health first aider. Okay, that's fine. Then you've got the secondary level. That's where we say to the employees, here's some resilience training, like say the work that you guys do. So that's helping the individual. But that primary level is where we say, okay, what's happening in the workplace culture that may be causing people to feel very stressed out or to feel overwhelmed? And that's where we need to look at leadership behaviors, and we need to elevate managers' skills and capabilities so that they can create that level of psychological safety for their employees, so that people feel like they can come and say, I'm not having a good day today, or I'm not sure I agree with that policy that we've just put in place, and not be worried about what's going to come off the back of it. That's where we need to really look at those 3 levels. And I think we need to elevate people's understanding of actually what well-being is, because I think it's become narrow in terms of the options that people think when it comes to addressing well-being. But actually it's much broader than that. And we need leaders, we need organizations, we need managers to understand what is legally required of them from, say, the health and safety executive's point of view, but equally what is morally the right thing to do.
Yeah, totally. And even when you were speaking then, I thought about a meeting that happened just recently when somebody said, is it a skill or a will issue? And actually, from what you described, or maybe it's none of those things. Maybe it's something else, So and just to kind of rewind a little bit, I mean, you've got a really interesting story which has kind of led you to do what you do. And I think it would be really great to share with people a bit about that and kind of what you learned about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out, in the corporate world. I was there for many years, not revealing my age. and I was very much kind of part of that work hard, play hard mentality, very kind of 1980s Melanie Griffiths working girl, Wall Street, like you got to put in the hours, you've got to really get your head down. And I have to say, I was given some pretty bad advice when I was coming through my career around, if you feel stressed, just push through it, just keep going, kind of, get your head down. That's how you will achieve. And I think I really internalized that. And I was like, right, that's exactly what I'm going to do. That said, I mean, now that I know all these things that I do about burnout, I was very much predisposed as somebody who was probably going to burn out, because I was very much an overachiever and a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. So when you take those kind of characteristics that I had and put me in a workplace culture that encourages you to kind of push yourself and to really, go through the pain to get the gain. It was like a really bad marriage, if you like. And I very much, was on that path to burnout. And I was very much somebody who was going down that road. And there were many times in my career where I could feel myself becoming really unwell. I wasn't necessarily a very good leader. I would describe myself as, at that point in my career, quite emotionally unintelligent, and I wasn't really aware of the effect I was having on the people around me. But nothing was really changing. I wasn't prepared to change anything, because the truth is that I kept getting promoted because I was doing what, as the organisation wanted, really, really good work. And so actually, as I kind of continued down that path, it wasn't until I became exceptionally unwell in 2014, and I found myself on my deathbed, that actually I kind of took stock and had to admit that all of the things that I had been pushing myself to achieve, all of the promotions, status, the power, owning houses, doing all of these things, actually at the point where someone said to me, "We're not sure that we can save you, but we're going to do our best," made me stop and think, oh my God, what have I been doing all of this time? I've been focusing on all of the wrong things. And actually, at that point, I realized that I really needed to make some changes. The sad thing is that even when I came out of that, and came out of hospital, and I came back home and I kind of recovered, I went right back into those same work environments, and really I couldn't change myself. And it was at least a year and a half after that kind of event where I actually again had to stop and pause, and was diagnosed with PTSD. And for the first time, I actually had to say, I really, really need some help, and I don't know anything, and I'm really, really stuck. And actually, if that hadn't have happened, I probably would have just gone on and burnt out, because that was the road I was back on again. But for the first time then, at that point in my career, I actually stopped and I said, okay, I've got to do something. I got help. And that was where I really started my journey with understanding what resilience is. I didn't understand it beforehand. I thought it was just all about persevering and carrying on and doing that at all costs. But actually, that's not really what resilience was. And the first time in my life, I actually stopped and asked for help. And I had to lean on the people around me. And that for me was very humbling and made me feel very vulnerable. And as someone who never showed any vulnerability up until that point, I realized that that's where this true strength and power came from. And through this journey is where I discovered positive psychology. And so I retrained as a positive psychology coach. And I started using that training within the organizations that I worked in. And I started talking to people about vulnerability, about what real strength is. And when I did that, when I came back into the workplace for a second time, if you like, after having had PTSD and talking about trauma, it really started to open up those discussions in the workplace.
Yeah.
And it changed the whole narrative around me, and it changed me as a leader. And I realized that when I was on my deathbed, but equally when I came back into the workplace, very much as a changed person, that really it just came about choosing love. And love was the change. beforehand, I had chosen power, status, and money, and none of that had actually led to any real happiness. But actually, when I came back this time, I thought, I choose love. And that really transformed my entire leadership. And I became somebody who was much more kind, who was much more compassionate, who was much more inclusive, who was much more interested in psychological safety, who was much more interested in building the resilience of the team around me, the organisation around me, and bringing out the best in other people. And actually, when that shift happened, is when the shift happened culturally within the workplace as well. And I could see the changes. We experienced the changes as a team, as an organisation. We experienced high levels of performance, but sustainable performance. We experienced people who were able to understand actually when things were going wrong, it was okay. We could talk about it and we could work our way through it. And so we started to win awards for, team collaboration, team spirit, for the work that we were doing. We were much better equipped to be able to deal with challenges. And it wasn't just because of me, it was the work that we all did collectively. And I think that's really important for people to understand about resilience. It's not just about the individual, we're all in together. And actually, it's the same for when we're facing burnout. We can't do it unless we're all working together. Adam, psychologist, recently said burnout is everyone's problem, but also everyone's the solution. So it's the same. We have to work on all of these things together in order for these changes to happen. And I think for me, that was a really big part of my story. And it's also the same that we have seen borne out in the evidence and in the data as well. That is coming out. Bruce Daisley has a book that's coming out about fortitude, which is actually about how resilience is very much rooted in how we can all support each other. And so I think these messages are really important that we start to talk about so that people understand where the work needs to happen.
It's a wonderful ethos, isn't it? This idea that actually we are better together, that we can support each other. I think it's one I do remember, and I don't know at what point we'll stop mentioning lockdown, but I do remember at the start of lockdown how people came together and how honestly, it was good for the heart. Even in my street, people coming together and helping each other and checking in on each other. And you go for a walk in the park, and strangers would be like, "You all right?" Yeah. And in the past, I'd have been like, "What?" And I was like, "Who are you?" To a complete stranger. But it just warmed your heart. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say, we haven't managed to hold on to it here completely, but it still stays with me how people came together and what a difference it made at a tough time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was an interesting kind of piece of work that we did recently around this, about how people, specifically key workers, felt like in that time in the lockdowns when everything was kind of working together and everyone was supporting each other, they felt like heroes. And actually now they feel like they've gone from hero to zero. Yeah. And it's really sad because they don't feel like they've got that same level of community, that same level of support. And we're seeing that replicated even in the private sector across different workplaces as well, where people are feeling like they are not valued and appreciated. And one of the things we often get asked about is, well, okay, so what is the solution? How do we make kind of people more resilient, or how do we kind of stop burnout? And I always say, it's the simplest things. It's asking people how things are going for them. It's valuing them, it's appreciating them for the work that they're doing. It's saying, I see you, I hear you, I value you. Yeah. It's the basic psychological needs that need to be met. It's nothing more than that. But actually, if you can get those basics right, that is where you see people feel like they have that sense of belonging, where people feel like I'm on top of the world because you believe in me, I believe in myself. And that is where you see the magic happening. And that is where we see things change. And so if we want to address these issues and we really want to stop them from happening, that is the work that needs to be done.
And I guess that doesn't just go for the leaders being interested. I guess we've all got a role to play on checking in on our, on our peers, on people around us, and having that camaraderie where we do support each other and we are interested in each other and we do believe in each other, not just from a manager's perspective.
No, absolutely. You're quite right. It's for all of us because we are all a part of it. Workplace cultures are a product of all of us because we are, right? So the way we behave, the things that we say, the things that don't get said, all of these things are really, really important. So I think it's imperative that we understand that we all have a role to play and we can make it better.
Yeah, and I was interested in your story as well. So when you mentioned, obviously, nobody has to have a near-death experience. I'm just thinking, before that happened and you were really ill, do you think there were signs there? And again, I'm thinking of this collaborative approach. And there was a peer of mine that I thought, that's not right. How can I help them? Do you think there's warning signs there that maybe others didn't see and you did recognise before it got to that point?
Oh, there were loads of warning signs. And I mean, there were so many red flags, but I did a great job of hiding them. So I could, for example, I was having physical health issues with my back, with my eyes. I was short-tempered with people. I felt like I had to pretend on the outside that I was doing really well, but inside I knew I felt overwhelmed and anxious, and I didn't want to tell anyone that. While I did get really terrible advice from some leaders, other leaders did sort of, try to pull me from the side and said, slow down. This isn't going to be good for you, but I didn't want to hear it. So there were flags all over the place, all over. But unfortunately, what happens is, I think perhaps companies aren't necessarily aware that there are actually 12 stages of burnout.
No.
And the 12 stages burnout syndrome, but there are 11 opportunities before them to reverse burnout. But without that level of awareness, without that open discussion that's happening, I don't think any of us were really aware enough. And I think also, a lot of times in companies, they are benefiting off the backs of people who push themselves to deliver and over-deliver. And women are the ones who are doing that. They are doing a lot of the kind of non-glamorous work, but it needs to be done in order for things to keep running. And when we're not appreciated or valued, or when we don't have people who are going to say, we've got to change this isn't right, it's very easy then to keep going down that path, because the truth is that things like burnout are very, very seductive. Because you get a lot of validation, you get a lot of praise, pushing through things, delivering. A project came in on the bank holiday and we turned it around in 3 days. 1 5s to each of us. And you feel like, I feel on top of the world. But it's such a slippery slope, because if you keep on and you keep on delivering and over-delivering, and you're getting all this like praise, you think, I'm doing such a great job, and you ignore the other signs. Other signs. I can keep going. It doesn't matter if I can't get up and move, but I delivered and I'm being paid for it. And then suddenly, before you know it, you can't get up in the morning. You're too exhausted. You've lost touch with the people around you because you've been working so hard. And it's a very, very, very lonely place. And then suddenly that validation doesn't feel as good.
No.
Unfortunately, it's not for that stage then that you think I need to do something.
And you use those words around being an overachiever and being a perfectionist, and it's those kind of words. They're always those double-sided words, aren't they? Where sort of you can ask somebody, well, what's your biggest fault, and they go, oh, I'm a perfectionist, and it's like, we know that it's a double-edged sword. We know all these things, actually when they're taken to that extreme can actually have quite a negative impact, but at the same time it's also got this little badge of honor. I mean, I used to work in the city when people would literally have 2 jackets and they'd leave that one jacket on the chair as they left the office because they didn't want to look like they'd gone home. You know,
I think there's a thing, the more you do, the more it's expected as well. So you kind of make it watch your own back, and some of that appreciation wears off, but the expectation is still there. So I guess there's that double. And interestingly, you know, just speaking about perfectionism, and I think you alluded to it earlier about your personality type. Do you think personality types influence whether you're more susceptible to burnout, and maybe even how resilient you are?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly personality types that we would say are definitely more likely to. There's also other vulnerable groups. So women are what we call vulnerable group. Introverts are another one. The truth is that the biggest cause of burnout is the workplace culture, is the kind of management behaviors. If you think about it as like three circles on a screen, the biggest circle on the screen is the workplace and the culture. The second one are the categories. So that's the at-risk category. So like I said, women, introverts, and certain personality types. And then the third one are your belief systems. So for example, if you believe that you need to deliver at all costs, or if you believe that work is everything, or if you believe that you're not good enough, or if you believe that you need to please people at all costs, those kind of belief systems, those are like, if you like, the three main causes. And if you think you can tick against each of those three, then you're definitely in an environment that you're most likely to be susceptible to burnout, which means either you have to change some things about yourself or the place that you work in, or you have to change where you work. You know, ultimately that they're kind of your choices.
And like you say, there's how much is on you as an individual, and how much is about that psychological safety and the environment that your leader.
That there is, if we look at the World Health Organization's definition of burnout, there is a duality even in that definition, where they talk about, yes, the individual, but they talk about it being a workplace phenomena. So it is about the workplace. And so if we want to address it, then the solution has to address both sides. It can never be just one without the other. And that is really, really important for organizations to understand.
Yeah, and I think that's a lovely point to leave people with on LinkedIn as well, you know, is to really think about that environment and your peers and being supported. But that's been really fascinating, Sharon. Amazing. And congratulations again on your award. Amazing work. Really thrilled for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
we'll be continuing to host these Resilience Matters series, but we're also going to be doing some free training. We commence on the 17th of October to support Mental Health Awareness Month. So if anybody would like to sign up for that or see any more information, that can be done through our website, as well as our free copy of 101 Ways to Build Your Resilience and Mental Strength. So until then, take care. Thank you again, Sharon and Alison.
Thanks, Sharon.
And we will catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.